Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Going the JC Route. I'm JC. That's AJ. The Birdman's not with us today. Feeling a little under the weather, which sucks, but the life must go on. I know. Sorry. We apologize. It's been goodness.
Yeah,
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
No, I think we didn't do one last week or the week before. This is week 3.
I'll say it's been 3 weeks. Working full time, sometimes over full time,
Yeah.
and trying to grow a podcast at the same time is difficult, but um that's why we're here. That's why we're actually going to be now recording hopefully multiple episodes a week, so that way we can kind of space them out and deliver them to everybody. And this video, it wasn't necessarily planned, but we wanted to do it because that's the local team and we have a resident graduate with us. We're essentially doing the same thing we did with our big time schools, OU, Texas, and Arkansas. We're gonna do an SMU video. SMU's most impactful players, in our opinion, going into the 2023 season. When I was doing research for this video, living in Dallas, you kind of hear different things, and being in the circle of college football, you understand a few things about SMU.
Yeah.
But when I started doing research for the video, I started realizing, I was like, dang, they've got talent.
Yeah.
Now, given they've got problems, but there is talent on the roster.
Oh, there's tons of it.
And if SMU is able to put it together, they've got a
shot.
A really, really good chance of being good this year.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to beat OU in Norman, but that's not here nor there at this point in time.
Right.
But looking at that roster made me a lot more nervous than I originally was. Let me tell you.
Did it actually make you?
Dude, there's so many, and I'll talk about it here in a little when we get into it. But there were so many players on that roster I was going through, and I'm like, wait a minute. They're either committed to OU at one point in the recruiting process, or OU really wanted them in the recruiting process.
Yeah.
And they went somewhere else, and it didn't pan out. So now they're at SMU, and it's just like, where the hell did they got all this talent from?
The transfer portal, my guy.
And so, and SMU has money, so I don't doubt that they're playing the NIL game very, very much. And here's the thing: being located in Dallas, they've got such an advantage to a lot of out-of-state schools because you are recruiting your home state. There are so many players on this roster I noticed that are from places like Sauk or Duncanville or even around Austin, around Houston. You're recruiting your own state. And when you're able to do that with how deep Texas is, it's easy to be a good football program. It's just they've got to be able to put it together consistently. And so that's what we're kind of hoping to dig into a little bit is who's going to be the most impactful people and players on this roster this year.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
So that being said, without making us wait at all, right? Let's just start here. Did we both put Preston Stone?
Oh yeah. First and foremost, that is the first player.
Let me let you lead off.
So, I mean, it's Preston Stone. Every list, if you're going to do a 5-player list on most impactful players going into this year at SMU, you got to put Preston Stone at number 1.
Well, so for some reference, for people that may not know who Preston Stone is, Preston Stone's a local Dallas boy. Went to Parish Episcopal private school in Dallas.
Literally 5-minute drive from my house.
Highly recruited, high 4-star, borderline 5-star according to some resources. Went to SMU, stayed home when he was recruited by all kinds of different places.
Yeah.
Out of high school, stayed home, played for SMU, sat behind Tanner Mordecai.
2
seasons. Is this his junior year or is redshirt sophomore year?
So he was a redshirt. He was a redshirt, and so he's a sophomore this year.
So this is his second season.
Correct. Well,
redshirt freshman year. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's the second season. So that's really why I put him on my list more than anything. Not because he was highly recruited or highly rated coming out of high school. I put him on my list because of the switch at quarterback. You had Tanner Mordecai, who lit it up while at SMU, from Oklahoma. You're welcome. But decided, instead of going to the league, he decided, I'm going to transfer to Wisconsin, play for Luke Fickell, and do that one more season thing.
And Mordecai 2 seasons ago did really well. And side note, when I went to, I think it was the COVID year, Oklahoma played Florida at the Cotton Bowl.
Yes.
I was wearing my SMU shirt, and I was in the Oklahoma section. They were like, "You're wearing the wrong team," and I just looked at them. I was like, "Thanks to the quarterback." And they were like, "We don't need him. We don't need him." Well,
I mean, we did have Caleb Williams
at the time,
so
but
we did have Caleb Williams. At the time, we did.
At the time, but
actually, no. 2020 was the year we. 2020 was the year we didn't have Caleb Williams, but we had him committed coming in, though.
Right, it was Rattlers.
So, in 2020 was the year. 2020 was the year Rattler was actually decent at Oklahoma. 21, he took that step back, and then he went to South Carolina and was actually decent again last year, and hopefully he can, continue to build off that confidence at South Carolina this year.
But anyway,
but that's a tangent.
So,
what I was saying is that quarterback transition will him Preston Stone being successful will be a big determinant of the team's success this year.
Agree. And I've watched film on Preston Stone, and he actually played a little bit last year. He can play. Like, it's I just want to see him now play a whole season. But you need a good driver to drive the car, and who better to do it than the local hero, Preston Stone. And his name, too. Say it slowly. Preston Stone.
All right,
what
dude.
a name.
Calm down.
Name. I love the name.
You think that notion of being the local boy will add too much pressure to him, or you think he'll handle it okay?
I don't think so. I think from what I've seen, and from also like what Rhett Lashley has said, because he's been asked time and time again how Preston Stone's how he's looking, how he thinks he's gonna be, develop as a quarterback. He's embracing the 2-1-4 atmosphere, which I love. So I think he'll do just fine. I think he'll do better than Bouchel did, but we'll see. I'm excited to have him. I mean, SMU hasn't had like a true 4 borderline 5-star quarterback commit in I don't know how long. So the fact that he's coming in just adds that much more to this season. So that's who I have number 1.
Well, and here that's a great caveat into the next number 2, because for me, you've got to have a competent, head at the wheel, captain at the wheel, driver of the car, and we're going to find out pretty quickly if Preston Stone's made for it.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that can be super helpful in that transition is having very, very talented people around him. And the one thing that stood out to me when I was looking through players on SMU's roster is the 3-headed transfer running back monsters of Kamar Wheaton, Jalen Knighton, and LJ Johnson.
It's funny you mentioned that, kind of moving into that. We were talking about a couple of weeks ago, Arkansas's backfield and even UT's backfield, and to a point, Oklahoma's backfield. Dude, so number 2.
I would argue, talent-wise, SMU may be the top room at the moment.
It very well could be.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the argument, which we talked about it, I think, off air before we hopped on, was those players, Kamar Wheaton, Jalen Knighton, LJ Johnson, 2 of the 3 of which from Texas, all 3 of which Oklahoma wanted in the recruiting process out of high school. Actually, Jalen Knighton was committed to Oklahoma for almost a year before he flipped to Miami. And I think OU was in Kamar Wheaton's final two. Actually, we were in LJ Johnson's final two with A&M too. Whatever.
So go
We
ahead.
lost. But all three of those players, talented as they may be, have their off-field issues.
They do. And
that's my one hesitation there.
so Jalen, his nickname's Rooster, by the way.
Yep.
Jalen Knighton. Why I have him as number 2 is you just said it. He was at Miami, who was also at Miami. James, do you know?
Tell me.
Rhett Lashley.
Ah, fair.
So, which he was coaching there while Jalen Knighton was over there. So the fact that those two get to reunite is awesome. And I don't know if you know this, Knighton can absolutely fly. So,
why do you think Oklahoma recruited him? I know.
So yeah, no, it's great. Hey, again, thank you, James. Thank you.
But
and then
what?
And then Kamar, go ahead.
So to build off of that, right?
Yeah.
What's a quarterback's best friend in the offensive game?
Backfield.
It's a good running game,
Yep.
and assuming you're able to get those kids straight off the field, their play on the field is going to work itself out regardless. We'll see how it comes down to them working together, playing time, whatever it may be. But on paper, leading into the season, that's a nasty three-headed monster because you've got size and LJ Johnson. You've got you've got size and speed with Jalen Knighton, and then Kamar Wheaton. He's probably the slightest of the three, but he can still absolutely burn.
Yeah, he can.
And he's the local kid. He played in Garland. I'm pretty sure Lakeview Centennial in Garland.
Which
LJ Johnson's out of Houston. I know that, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I know Kamar Wheaton was out of Garland. So, he's got he's got all the hope in the world to show out for DFW.
And SMU now has 3 former top 10 like running back recruits in the nation with like Wheaton, Knighton, and now the transfer LJ Johnson. So it looks good. It looks really good. On paper.
Absolutely. Anything to add with the running back?
Man, it looks good. And like kind of to your point earlier, like when I did this a couple weeks ago, getting my SMU players together, I actually learned a lot. I knew that we got a lot of help, but it looks like a good roster, man. I like our chances in Norman.
We'll see.
Hey, number 3. Well,
You know what? Number 3. Let me keep it here because for the flow purposes, it's easy. We'll touch on the other ones later. Number 3, I have the wide receiver tandem of Jordan Curley and Jordan Hudson.
I put Jordan Curley specific.
So
Jordan Hudson too. Jordan Hudson can ball, and now he actually gets a chance to.
So here's another thing, right? Jordan Hudson, high 4-star, borderline 5-star wide receiver out of Grand Prairie. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind, his recruiting process was interesting to say the least. He had committed and decommitted from several places. I think Oklahoma, including that, was one. But he committed to Oklahoma, decommitted. That was the whole Lincoln Riley leaving thing. But then I think he committed to TCU and then decommitted. And then he ended up at SMU signing finally, which is interesting. But that being said, when SMU's whole recruiting pitch is, hey, we're Dallas playing in Dallas for Dallas, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot to kids from Dallas. We can totally get it. We're from Dallas, right? And so getting him in the boat was ridiculously great for the team because he's super talented. He can run. He's not the fastest person in the world, but his hands are what set him apart.
Yeah.
Which anytime you've got great hands, you're going to be a quarterback's best friend, right? Because there's 2 things that there's really 3 things that can make a wide receiver stand out, right?
Hands,
burner speed, great hands, and the ability to get open, right? Because you can have the ability to get open without being super fast. But for him, if you have great hands, you can do a lot of stuff if you're not fast and you can't get open, right? Mm-hmm. And so where he's got that one thing that might set him apart, if he can continue to build on one of those other two, either be burner fast or get open, he's going to be Preston Stone's best friend. And the other side of that was the other side of the Jordan tandem was Jordan Curley. You're adding another big time transfer from Arizona State that he's a big target. And when it comes to young quarterbacks, anytime you can have a big target, because I think Jordan Curley's like 6'2". Anytime you have a big target, it's only going to be easier.
And Hudson's 6'1".
So no, Hudson's than your wide receiver. That's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. You took the words out of my mouth. I think it'll be interesting, especially now that Prochet, Rashid Rice, Roberson are all not here anymore. It'll be interesting to see like how the new era of wide receivers, which is pretty loaded also on paper,
you have to replace that stable of NFL receivers with new talent, young talent, and I feel like they've done a really good job doing that, mixing a lot of homegrown local talent at wide receiver while also adding a few experienced transfers in there as well.
Yep. So my 4 and 5.
Awesome. Who do you have at number 4?
So I was torn. I wanted to talk about RJ Maryland, the tight end, but especially
South Lake Carroll. I like it.
Local. But I wanted to touch on the defense. So I think
I love where your head's at. My 4 and 5 come from the defense.
So cool. So for me, my 4th player is Ahmad Moses, who's a safety. And here's why. So the SMU's like number 1st, 2nd, 3rd concern in the transfer portal this year were impact players in the secondary. And so we added 5 transfers to help compete for that job in the secondary. Like that's something that we needed help on, and we got it. And Moses last year was a true freshman who rose up in the depth chart and finished as one of our like 3 starting safeties, who was an absolute beast and a pure tackler. This safety dude, he finished the season with 27 tackles and 1 sack and a couple tackles for loss. So that's something that was kind of missing, and he was the one player last year that was one of our more standout safeties. And they're saying since he's the one safety that's returning, that's not a transfer, that it'll be his group to help mold together and form some continuity with the secondary.
I really like that because actually 1/2, and I cheated because I don't know the SMU roster like I'm sure you do. I recognize a ton of the names on it, which is weird, but 1/2 of my number 4 is actually also a safety. I call this the Texas tandem because my number 4 is actually 2 transfers from Texas.
Okay.
And it's the combo of Chris Adamora and David Abiara. Chris Adamora, safety, big safety, got a ton of snaps at Texas. I guess decided to transfer. I didn't even know about this, but see it on the roster. You're adding an experienced safety. So like you said, right? Moses was a freshman last year who quickly rose through the ranks, which while that's nice, he's obviously good enough to play and start, but being as a freshman, you just lack experience, right? So what's one way to continue to grow and help a young, talented safety?
Recruit it. Yeah.
Add another safety that has a ton of college experience to help him to mentor him and coach him along, which is exactly what Chris Adamora was, right? Adamora wasn't necessarily always the best player at Texas, right? I mean, there's younger players, getting looks over him all the time. But like I said, he played a ton of snaps at Texas, and there's no substitute for collegiate experience. So that is super, super nice for SMU secondary. We spent a ton of time talking about their offense, but the defense matters just as much. And as much as the offense likes to sling the ball and be fast-paced offense, you've got to be able to stop the ball on the other end, which I know SMU had a tough time doing at some points last year also, as with a lot of other teams. But whenever you're adding experienced safety to the mix, that's gonna be helpful. I know you did the same thing with another safety this year. Just to touch really quickly on David Abiara, Mansfield legacy kid, who was highly recruited until there was some legal issues right near the end of his recruitment, goes to Texas and doesn't cut it. So he transfers and ends up at SMU. Dude is ridiculously talented. He's going to be a stud defensive end at some point if he can, put it all together.
Yeah.
But again,
you said Isaiah Smith?
David Abiara.
My bad.
Yeah. From Texas, super talented, Mansfield legacy. I went to one of his games when he was still in high school. Dude is good. Just needs to put it all together, make sure it's right on the field and off the field. And SMU is going to have added another ridiculous piece that will work out. And again, another local kid who wants to be good.
Yeah. So my fifth player.
Number 5. Number 5.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I actually kind of going back to it before I get too far ahead of myself. The defensive ends that I liked, and from just reading, the Dallas Morning News actually listed Isaiah Smith and Jalen Samuels. They're two defensive ends that will give you more than you can even ask for. They're going to be very pivotal for SMU's defensive success next season. So, which last season we saw hints and little bits and pieces of their potential. So again, they were both freshmen. So this year they're projected to absolutely shine. So we'll see what happens. But my fifth guy, also in the secondary, is Jonathan McGill. Okay. I don't know if you know this. McGill he's a transfer senior. He was an SMU pledge during high school for a long time. And guess where he ended up? Stanford. He went to Stanford. He went to Stanford. He played 4 years at Stanford, and he finished his career with 115 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, and 4 interceptions. So he is he's from Coppell, so just down the road. And he chose to come back to finish his college career at SMU, where it kind of all more or less started. And he wants to help kind of mold the young secondary room, kind of like what we were talking about. So it's adding him. It's not just adding a player who can help get the secondary back in the right direction, but it's also adding somebody who gets immediate credibility with coaches and peers at SMU. So, and especially our cornerbacks coach.
Sure.
So,
I love where the thought process is similar to Adamora, adding talented transfers that are going to make you better immediately. And that's realistically, that's where the college game is getting to, is you are, because unless you're one of those programs where you perennially know you're going to be bad, that's the college game now. You are balancing taking young high schoolers with experienced college players, more or less experienced college players that may or may not help you now versus freshmen.
Yeah. And it's especially the direction SMU is going. It just seems like they want that continuity players from the area.
Absolutely. Recruiting locally is massive in their plan. I mean, Texas Tech is doing the same thing with Joe McGuire, right? And it's really, SMU is really in an interesting position because they are one of those high-end G5 teams that when the next round of realignment bugs run around, they're one of those schools looking to move up to a P5 conference, which you
Yep.
can argue whether it's to be Power 5, Power 4, whatever, right? But I mean, with the news recently coming out of Colorado going back to the Big 12, now there's rumors of the Arizona schools moving to the Big 12, the
There's
Pac-12 or the Mountain West or whoever else, they're going to be looking for. I mean, the Pac-12 realistically, they're going to be looking for teams to regroup, and they'd be dumb not to consider SMU as one of those top teams, right? Especially when you have Power 5 talent on the roster,
yeah,
and that's one of those things. Is a big thing with SMU this year is you want to prove it this year, right? You brought in all these transfers. You want to be good this year because whenever realignment comes back around, whether it's in the winter this year, summer next year, wherever it is, you want to be top of mind.
Yep.
To make that next step up.
Agreed.
And having a good year with good transfers this year is what will do it.
Yeah. And plenty of that.
So to wrap up, I kind of cheated on number 5.
Who'd you pick?
So, with number 5, I kind of cheated. I wrote a coach's name down.
Brett Lashley.
What?
Lashley?
No.
Who?
No. I wrote down Calvin Thibodeau.
Really? Okay. That's interesting.
Defensive line coach.
Yeah.
Why?
Because of Thibodeau that's in the NFL.
No, that's not at all why.
Why? Hold on a second. Thank you, James. I just clicked on his name. I was like, wait. Oh, okay. So this is how Oklahoma had such a good defensive line for so long.
I don't know about that. I really like Calvin Thibodeau. He's an OU alumnus. Started coaching the defensive line under Bob Stoops, Mark Stoops, then continued into the Lincoln Riley, administration. And then when he left, he kind of got left because, of course, Brent Venables brought Todd Bates with him, which Todd Bates is widely known as one of the best defensive line coaches in the country, not only as a developer, but as a recruiter. So as unfortunate, as much as we liked Calvin Thibodeau, he was kind of the odd man out. So moving to SMU, he went down a step as far as where he was coaching, but that doesn't mean he's not a damn good coach, because Calvin's a damn good coach. And not only is he a good coach, but guess what he did, just like a lot of other position groups at SMU did this year.
Yeah.
Brought in a bunch of experienced talent, right? The 3 names I have written down are Corey Roberson, Oklahoma. He's going to be a redshirt senior. Stephon Wright and Deveray Levelston. Multiple year guys, may not have been starters, but experienced college football players. And looking through SMU's roster, again, they recruited really well freshmen from Texas on the defensive line.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily going to help you this year, where this year needs to be a statement year from SMU.
Yeah.
Not only for the program's future, but honestly for Rhett Lashley's future as well. Because while he's been good, you really need to see him take another step if he's going to be that guy, right? Because let's be honest, Rhett Lashley's probably got ambitions higher than SMU, probably. So he's got to prove he can take that next step and continue to build a program if he's going to go somewhere else. And so continuing to bring in talented coaches like Calvin Thibodeau and talented players, especially on the defensive line, right? We hounded it with Oklahoma and Texas and Arkansas, whatever it may be, is your defense goes as your front 7 goes.
Agreed.
If you get to the quarterback, a lot of other things fall into place.
Agreed.
And I trust Calvin Thibodeau to get his defensive linemen ready to go. The player is going to be up to the players to put it all together. And
Yeah.
so defensive line, especially when you've got now Thibodeau in his second year and a bunch of experienced linemen coming in, they may not mesh early on, but over time, and as the season progresses, they should get better.
For sure. And I'm kind of looking at it too while you were talking. So basically, SMU is basically instead of the Mustangs, it should be the Long Sooners.
Just call them Transfer U, dude.
Transfer U. Honestly, and that's been the beauty of like the NCAA's and like ruling a couple of years ago, where they're like only so many like scholarship players can sit on the bench now, and they have to transfer. That's the beauty of the rule. It
Well,
helps.
here's the other thing, and I'm starting to realize Oklahoma's doing it, is with how the NIL game is. Teams, if you've got a deep NIL pool, you can essentially recruit with a limitless roster.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Now it's harder to do it at SMU since you're a private school, but at schools like Oklahoma, where you can recruit, 3-star kids that you really like, but may not want to give a scholarship to. Guess what? They're paying in-state tuition, and if you have a decent NIL program, they're essentially going to school on a scholarship anyway.
Yeah.
But they count as a walk-on.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still getting the talented players as a walk-on. And that's just so much more beneficial, especially when it's in-state kids. Now, like I said, at SMU, where they're private school and your tuition's $70,000 a year, it's harder to do that. But I'm sure SMU is finding a way to do that with local kids anyway.
Yeah, I'm looking at this too. Thibodeau, he coached. I can never pronounce this name. Sorry if I butcher it. Ogbonia Okoronkwo.
Obo Okoronkwo.
That one. That's how you say it.
He's in the NFL now, yes.
And DJ Ward.
Yes.
Huh. Wow. And I'm looking at this guy's stats. He actually 3 big championships and helped the Sooners to appearances in a pair of BCS national championship games. Wow. This guy was good. I did not know this. James, you taught me something.
That's what I'm here for.
So, all this to be said,
SMU's got an incredibly talented roster this year.
Yep.
They should be fun to watch. I expect them, as with any other team that brings in a lot of transfers, meshing early in the season may be difficult, but watch for them to make significant run as the season progresses. It should be a lot of fun. So just to recap, 5 players for me were Preston Stone, that 3-headed running back tandem of Knighton, Johnson, and Wheaton. The tandem of Jordans at wide receiver, Curley and Hudson.
Yep.
The Texas tandem of transfers, Chris Adamore and David Abiara. And then my ex-Sooner, Calvin Thibodeau, and his defensive line core.
And my first 3 were the same as yours, and then Ahmad Moses, the safety, and then Jonathan McGill, cornerback and safety.
Keep those names in your mind, but it'll be fun to see what SMU does this year. And I think we're going to go to the OU-SMU game. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan.
In Norman. That's the second week of the season, right?
Yeah, and I've got to make time off for it.
But that'll be a fun game. It's a night game, so it should be a little less hot and be a lot of fun.
What day is that?
The 9th, I think.
Okay. We'll take a look.
But that's our SMU most impactful players going into the 2023 season. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Drop us a like or a comment. We'll be back with another episode soon. So we'll see you when you see you. Thanks again for listening. Deuces.
Pony up Dallas.
I don't know why you'd say that.
Pony up Dallas.
Don't ever say that.
Pony up, baby.